Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I was 36 when the world narrowed to a single job site and a single number on a screen. Line pressure. That sounds small until you live inside it. The pump station sat out in western Arizona, where the desert looks flat until the light changes and you notice the ridges and the dry washes and the way the heat makes distance lie to you. If you drove out from Quartzsite and kept going, you could pass the last cluster of gas stations and fast food signs, and then you were in the kind of place where people don't stop unless they have to. The station had a name the public never used. Most people didn't even know it existed. On my paperwork, it was listed as a pumping plant on the Central Arizona Project System, one of the facilities that keeps Colorado River water moving across hundreds of miles of canal and into cities that have no business existing in a landscape this dry. The Central Arizona Project is a 300-plus mile conveyance system, and it takes a lot of electricity to lift water out of Lake Havasu and push it across Arizona. The whole system is designed around pumps, lifts, tunnels, and careful scheduling, because water and power are tied together out here. I wasn't an executive or an engineer with my name on a project plaque. I was a field electrician and controls tech, the person who gets called when a motor trips, when a variable frequency drive faults, when a pressure transmitter starts drifting, when a panel overheats, when a relay chatters and nobody can tell if it's the relay or the power quality feeding it. I'd spent years inside metal buildings that smelled like dust and warm insulation, reading diagrams, tracing wires, and listening to equipment through the soles of my boots. My name is Eli Navarro. And that week, when the first reports started coming in on the radio and the phone started dropping calls mid-sentence, I was already on site. The day the trouble began, I was standing in front of a control cabinet with a flashlight in my teeth, squinting at terminal numbers. Outside, the sun was bright enough to bleach the world. Inside, the air conditioner was fighting a losing battle. Dana Brooks, the station operator, leaned against the doorway with a clipboard. Dana was in her 40s and had the calm, tired confidence of someone who'd been responsible for expensive equipment for a long time. When things went wrong, she didn't get dramatic. She got methodical. "You seeing anything?" she asked. "Not yet." I set around the flashlight, then took it out. The drive's telling the truth. It's seeing under voltage. That's upstream. Utility says their side is fine. Utility always says their side is fine, I said. Could be harmonics. Could be a sag when someone else loads up. Could be a bad connection heating and dropping. Either way, if we keep trying to start the pump like this, we're going to burn something. Dana tapped her pen on the clipboard. Behind her, the main control room had the usual glow. Monitors showing flow, pressure, reservoir levels, motor temperatures, and alarms. The system wasn't flashy, it was practical. It was a set of decisions that had been made decades ago and improved in layers over time. A pumping plant isn't a single machine, it's a chain. The canal brings water to a forebay. The forebay feeds intake structures. Big pumps pull water through and push it into a pressurized pipeline or into a higher reach of canal. Pressure transducers confirm you're where you think you are. Flow meters tell you you're moving what you promised. A chlorine injection skid sits in a separate room, quiet and clean, dosing the water just enough to keep it safe. Everything reports back to a supervisory control system so an operator can run it without touching the equipment. You don't appreciate any of that until it stops. I turned back to the cabinet. The fault log on the drive showed 3 undervoltage events in 24 hours. That was unusual. The grid out here wasn't delicate, but it wasn't robust either. Long transmission lines, desert heat, and scattered loads make for a system that can wobble. Let's pull trends from the last week, I said. See if it's getting worse. Dana's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and put it down without answering. What? I asked. My sister, she said. Phoenix. Everything okay? Dana shrugged, but it wasn't convincing. She's sending me links, videos, people acting sick. They're saying it started in a hospital. I'd seen the same kind of thing before, not the illness part, but the social media part. Clips without context, panic in the comments, everyone guessing. I'd learned to treat it like background noise. Phoenix is always dealing with something, I said. Dana didn't smile. This looks different. I was about to tell her that everything looks different when you're staring at it on a phone screen when the station's radio crackled. Bouse Hills, you copy? A voice said. Dana moved to the radio. Bouse Hills copies. This is dispatch. We need status on your plant. We're getting reports of vandalism at remote sites. Gates cut, copper theft, the usual, but it's spreading. Dana looked at me. I'd been to enough remote sites to know how quickly the usual can become not the usual. We're stable, but dealing with voltage issues, Dana said. We've got one pump offline until we confirm the cause. Understood. Lock down your perimeter, keep eyes on your access road, and conserve fuel. If this gets into a wider outage, we're prioritizing critical loads. Dana's eyebrows went up. Fuel? The radio didn't answer the question directly. We'll update. Dispatch out. Dana stared at the radio like it had personally insulted her. Conserve fuel, she repeated. They're not supposed to talk like that. I wiped sweat off my forearm and left a faint streak of dust on my skin. Maybe they're just being cautious. Dana's phone buzzed again. This time she answered. I couldn't hear her sister's words, but I could hear Dana's voice change. It got quiet, tight, like she was holding her breath. After she hung up, she looked at me and said, Phoenix's emergency rooms are full. People are attacking staff. My sister says they're telling everyone to stay inside. That was the first time I felt the floor shift under me. Not physically, but in my head. A pumping plant is built on assumptions. The grid will be there, the roads will be open, the supply chain will keep moving, and if something goes wrong, someone will arrive with parts. I looked at the control room screens again. Flow, pressure, levels, everything normal, everything fragile. By the next morning, the voltage issue didn't matter, not compared to what was happening outside the fence. We had a tall chain-link perimeter with barbed wire, a main gate, and a smaller service gate. Beyond that, desert, a maintenance road, and nothing that looked like help. Harjit Singh arrived just after sunrise in a dusty pickup. Harjit was a communications and controls specialist, one of those people who can talk about networks and sensors the way Dana and I talk about valves and motors. He was supposed to be there for a routine firmware update on a remote terminal unit. He got out of his truck and stood for a moment, scanning the horizon like he expected it to change shape. You seeing this? He asked, holding up his phone. I didn't take it, I didn't want to, but Dana already had hers out. The video was shaky. A crowd outside a building. People shouting. Someone in the foreground turned and their face was smeared with something dark. The clip cut before you could make sense of it, but the comments were a flood. Infected, biting, stay home, martial law. That's Phoenix, Dana said, voice flat. Harjit swallowed. My cousin's in Tucson. She says the freeway's jammed. People are trying to leave. I looked out through the fence, the air already shimmered. Heat would hit hard by mid-morning. This place is isolated, I said, mostly to convince myself. We keep working, we keep running. We'll get instructions. Dana didn't answer. She was already walking toward the gate, checking the chain and padlock, testing it like a habit. A pumping plant is a strange kind of refuge. It's a facility designed to keep people out. It has thick doors, cameras, an alarm system, and enough structure to support heavy equipment. It has water on one side of the system, and it has water you can draw from controlled taps if you know where to look. It also has noise. When a big pump starts, it's not subtle. Even with the building closed up, you can feel it. The vibration carries through the ground. The sound travels. In a normal world, nobody cares. In a world where people are desperate, noise is a beacon. The first people came just before noon. I was in the electrical room with Harjeet, checking a cabinet fan that had started squealing. Dana was in the control room. We heard it faintly through the building walls. A vehicle, then another. Tires on gravel. A horn. Dana's voice came over the intercom, clipped. Eli, Harjeet, front gate. We moved fast. By the time we reached the gate, 3 vehicles had stopped outside. 2 SUVs and an older pickup with a ladder rack. There were 7 people in total, sunburned and dusty, wearing whatever they'd grabbed. Work shirts, athletic shorts, hats pulled low. One of them, a man in a reflective vest, stepped forward. "Hey," he shouted, "we need water." Dana stayed inside the fence, hands visible. "This is a restricted facility. You need to leave." The man pointed to the pump station buildings like that was proof of something. "We know what this is. We're from Vicksburg. My brother works on irrigation. We heard the canal's still running. Our town's pressure dropped this morning. We've got kids." There was a woman behind him with a toddler on her hip. The kid's face was red, lips cracked. Dana's jaw tightened. I could see the conflict in her. Dana wasn't cruel. She was responsible. "This plant is part of a larger system," Dana said. "We can't just open a valve." "People are sick," the man said. "Phones aren't working. There's fighting at the gas stations. We're not leaving without water." Harjeet leaned in, low voice. "If we give them water, more will come." I didn't like how true that sounded. Dana pointed at a sign on the fence. "No trespassing. Authorized personnel only." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She said, "Go back. Find your town's emergency services." The man laughed, sharp and humorless. "Emergency services? Lady, the sheriff left. We saw a fire truck parked sideways in the road and nobody around. You think anyone's coming?" Behind him, another person, young, jittery, kept looking over their shoulder like they expected something to sprint out of the desert. I watched the group's hands. No visible weapons, but that didn't mean anything. People can do damage with tools, with rocks, with determination. Dana said, "I can't help you." The man's face changed. Anger, then calculation. He looked at the gate chain. And then, from farther down the maintenance road, we heard another vehicle approaching fast. The group outside the gate turned as one, like a flock reacting to a shadow. A sedan came in hard, fishtailed, and stopped behind the other vehicles. A woman stumbled out of the driver's seat. Her hair was tangled and her shirt was torn. She ran toward the group, shouting something I couldn't make out. 2 seconds later, someone else climbed out of the back seat. At first glance, it looked like a man who'd been in a fight, staggering, head down. Then he lifted his face. His eyes weren't focused. His mouth hung slightly open, and his jaw worked like he was chewing air. He moved with a jerky urgency that didn't match exhaustion. The woman who'd been driving screamed and tried to pull him back. He grabbed her arm. She yanked away and fell backward. He didn't follow her. He turned toward the nearest person in the group outside our gate and lunged. Everything happened quickly and badly. The man in the reflective vest raised his hands, trying to push the stranger back. The stranger didn't slow down. He hit the man like a collision. They both went down in the gravel. People shouted. Dana stepped back from the fence, eyes wide. Harjeet swore under his breath. I watched the stranger's movement, how he clung, how he didn't react to pain the way a normal person would. The man in the vest tried to shove him off, and the stranger snapped his head forward in a sudden motion. I couldn't see details. I didn't need to. The woman from the sedan scrambled and tried to pull the stranger away. He turned on her with the same blank urgency. The group outside the gate broke apart, some backing up, some trying to help, some just frozen. Dana grabbed my arm. Inside, now. We didn't have to be told twice. We ran back toward the main building. Dana's voice on the radio was shaking for the first time I'd ever heard. "Dispatch, this is Bouse Hills. We have—" She stopped, as if the words wouldn't fit. "We have an active attack outside our perimeter. Multiple civilians." The radio hissed, then a different voice cut in, strained. "Bouse Hills, do not engage. Lock down. Repeat, lock down. Do not open the gate." Dana's eyes met mine. Her face was pale under the desert tan. "We're not opening it," she said. Behind us, the shouting outside changed into something else. Shorter, sharper, panicked. We got into the control building and sealed the doors. Dana hit the lockdown procedure like muscle memory. Perimeter cameras on main screen, door contacts checked, alarms armed. Harjit moved to the network panel, making sure the cameras stayed alive. On the camera feed, the scene outside the gate was chaos. People were running to their vehicles. The stranger moved fast, clumsy but relentless. One of the people who'd been arguing with Dana tried to get into the pickup and fumbled with the door handle. The stranger reached him. The man screamed. Dana's hands hovered over the controls like she could fix it from inside. She didn't. She couldn't. The vehicles peeled away in different directions, tires throwing dust. The sedan sat abandoned, its driver gone. The stranger stood in the road for a moment, swaying. Then he turned his head toward our fence, like he heard the hum of electricity inside our building, like he could sense the life behind the mesh. He stepped closer. Dana took a step back without realizing she was moving. "No," she whispered. The stranger walked along the fence line, fingers curling through the chain link. He pressed his face against it, mouth open, breathing hard. Then he moved on, following the fence as if he was searching for a weak spot. Harjit's voice was tight. "This is real." Dana swallowed. "We just watched it." I looked at the main screen where our flow and pressure numbers still ran like nothing had changed. Water was still moving. The system was still alive. Outside, the world had started to break. That night, we didn't go home. The decision wasn't dramatic, it was practical. Dana said, "If the roads are jammed and people are attacking each other, I'm not driving an hour through the desert." Harjit said, "If we leave, who runs the plant?" I said, "If the plant shuts down, pressure drops downstream. That hurts everyone." We were 3 people with access badges and a set of procedures that assumed a stable society. We had food in vending machines and a small break-room fridge, but not much. We had bottled water, ironically, because nobody trusts facility plumbing, even when the facility is built around water. We also had a diesel generator, intended for critical systems and controlled operation, not for running the whole plant indefinitely. The plant's biggest motors drew too much power. The generator was there to keep controls, lighting, communications, and certain valves operational during short outages. Dana opened the fuel log. "We've got enough diesel on site for a limited run," she said, "if we're careful." "If we're careful," Harjit repeated. We did a walkthrough of the site like we were preparing for a storm, except storms don't climb fences. We checked every door, we checked every window. We found the weak points, an older service hatch that didn't latch cleanly, a section of fence where the ground had eroded under it, leaving a gap big enough for a determined person to squeeze through. We blocked that gap from the inside with whatever we could move: a spare pipe, a pallet, a roll of chain-link fabric kept for repairs. We moved vehicles inside the perimeter: Dana's utility truck, Harjeet's pickup, my service van. We parked them where they could act as barriers near the main gate if someone tried to ram it. Dana pulled out the facility's emergency binder. In normal times, that binder covered things like heat illness and flash floods and power failures. It did not cover people who didn't feel pain and didn't respond to reason. She flipped pages anyway. "We're going to treat this like a security event," she said, voice steady by force. "Access control, visibility, noise discipline." "Noise discipline," Harjeet echoed, and I could tell he hated that he had to say it. We turned off non-essential lights. We kept the control room monitors dim. And we listened. The desert at night isn't silent. There's always wind, the occasional insect, and sometimes distant highway noise. But there's a difference between normal sound and the sound of humans moving in the dark. Just after midnight, we heard footsteps outside the fence. We froze. Dana brought up the camera feed and zoomed in. 3 figures moved along the access road, flashlights bobbing. They stopped at the sedan that had been abandoned earlier. One of them opened the door, looked inside, then stepped back like the smell hit them. They didn't come to our gate. They kept moving. "Looters," Harjeet whispered. "Or survivors," Dana said. I watched them disappear into the night on camera. My stomach felt hollow. There was a whole human story out there that we weren't part of, and we couldn't afford to be. Because we had something everyone would need: water. By the second day, the phones were mostly dead. We got fragments of information through the facility radio system and through the plant's link to the broader operations network when it stayed up. The messages were short and inconsistent. City shelter-in-place order. Reports of violence at distribution points. Multiple stations vandalized. Do not send staff to remote sites. Conserve fuel, conserve fuel, conserve fuel. Dana printed out a system status report and laid it on the table. "If the grid collapses," she said, "we lose pumping capacity. If we lose pumping capacity, downstream storage tanks start draining. That means taps go dry in places that don't have local wells." Harjeet nodded. "And if taps go dry, people move." "And if people move," I said, "they follow the canal." Dana stared at the numbers. Then she looked at me. "Eli, we need a plan that assumes nobody is coming." That sentence hit harder than any emergency alert, because in my whole career, someone always came. A supervisor, a contractor, a replacement part on a truck, a utility crew, a sheriff if things got weird. Someone always came. Now we had to build a plan around absence. "Okay," I said. "What do we have and what do we need?" Dana ticked off items like an inventory. "We have secure buildings, cameras, water on the canal side, a small potable line for the facility, diesel for the standby generator, limited food, tools, spare parts for valves and sensors, not major motors." Harjeet added, "We have a satellite phone in the safe. It's for emergencies. It might work if the satellite network isn't overloaded." Dana nodded. "We have one. We also have the ability to run the plant manually if the network goes down, up to a point." I said, "We need to stay alive. We need to keep the plant stable, and we need to control access to water." Harjeet looked at me sharply. "Control access?" I didn't mean it like a villain. I meant it like reality. "If we give water away freely, we get overrun," I said. "If we refuse everyone, we become a target." Dana leaned back, eyes tired. "So we ration." I nodded. "And we make the station look less attractive than it is." Harjit frowned. How do you hide a pump station? You don't, Dana said. But you can hide when you're running high flow. You can hide when you're making noise. You can run low, quiet, and predictable. The control screen showed flow rates in clean, stable lines. We could adjust, we could schedule. We could keep pressure up enough to feed downstream storage tanks without advertising ourselves with constant starts and stops. Donna looked at the screen where the pump status blinked green. If we keep one pump running at a steady load, she said, we reduce mechanical stress. Fewer starts, less noise, and less attention, Harjit said. We were still talking like professionals. It was comforting in a grim way. Systems didn't care about panic. A motor either ran or it didn't. A valve either opened or it didn't. Pressure either held or it didn't. But people did care, and people were coming. The third day brought the first serious test of the perimeter. It happened mid-afternoon when the heat made the air feel thick. I was on the roof checking the HVAC unit because the control room was starting to climb in temperature and electronics don't like heat. From the roof, you could see farther than from ground level. The desert stretched out in muted colors. The canal shimmered in the distance like a long, unnatural ribbon. That was when I saw the dust plume. A convoy, if you could call it that, moved down the access road. 3 vehicles, close together, traveling faster than was safe on gravel. I climbed down fast and met Dana and Harjit in the control room. Dana already had cameras up. They're coming straight to us, she said. Maybe they want directions, Harjit said. But his voice didn't believe it. The vehicles stopped outside the gate. This group looked different than the first one. There were more men than women. They moved with purpose. One of them carried a long tool, maybe a pry bar. Another had a hatchet on his belt. A third held something that could have been a rifle, but at that distance on camera it was hard to tell. Dana spoke into the loudspeaker. This is a restricted facility. Leave now. A man stepped forward, older than the rest, with a gray beard and a sun-faded shirt. He looked up at the camera like he knew exactly where it was. We're not here to fight, he shouted. We're here to talk. Dana looked at me. Do we talk? I thought about the first group. I thought about the stranger who had moved like hunger on legs. I thought about the fact that if these people decided to cut the fence, we couldn't stop them with words. We talk through the fence, I said. We don't open it. Dana nodded and kept her hands away from the gate controls. She used the loudspeaker again. State your business. The bearded man took a breath like he was trying to sound reasonable. We've got 40 people camped near the highway. Families, older folks. We found a school bus and we're using it as shelter. We need a reliable water source. We're willing to work. We're willing to trade. Trade with what? Harjit muttered. Dana stayed on the loudspeaker. This facility isn't a public distribution point. The man spread his hands. Nothing's public anymore. We're trying to keep order. If we don't get water, we move. And if we move, we're not the only ones. That last part was a threat disguised as a warning. Dana's face went tight. How did you find this place? The man looked up at the camera again. Followed the canal, followed the service roads, same way everyone will. I felt cold despite the heat. Dana said, You need to leave. If you approach the fence. The man cut her off. We're not leaving without an arrangement. We can keep people away from here if we have a reason to. We can keep this place from getting swarmed. Harjit leaned towards Donna. He's offering protection. Donna's eyes flicked to the fuel log on the table, to the limited food, to the fact that 3 people could not hold a perimeter forever if a crowd decided to test it. And then there was the other kind of crowd, the infected, who didn't negotiate. Dana looked at me. Eli. She wasn't asking for permission. She was asking for a technical truth, what this plant could do and what it couldn't. I took a breath. We can provide controlled water without letting anyone inside. There are exterior hose bibs near the maintenance bay, but they're inside the fence. Dana frowned. So we'd have to bring water out. Or, Harjit said slowly, we use the fire department connection. Dana turned to him. The what? Harjit pointed at a diagram on the wall, the facility layout. There's a standpipe hookup used for training and emergency supply. It's not meant for public use, but it's accessible near the gate structure. It's inside, but close enough that we could set up a controlled fill point without opening the main gate, if we're careful. Dana stared at him. Then she looked at me. Would that compromise the system? I shook my head. If we run it off the facility line and control pressure, it's manageable, but it uses our potable reserve. That's finite unless we refill from the canal side, which means treatment. Dana exhaled. So, we'd be building a distribution point. I didn't like it, but I also understood. If we did nothing, people would try to take water anyway. If we did something controlled, we might shape what happened next. Dana picked up the loudspeaker. Listen carefully, she said. We are not opening this gate. We are not allowing anyone inside. If we provide water, it will be limited and scheduled. If anyone attempts to cut the fence, ram the gate, or threaten staff, the water stops. Do you understand? The bearded man nodded once, like he'd expected that. We understand. Dana continued. You will choose 2 people to approach at a time. Everyone else stays back. No rushing, no shouting. You will leave when you're done, and you will keep other groups away. The man's face tightened. We can try, but we can't control everyone. Dana's voice stayed flat. Then try harder. The man nodded again. What do you want in return? Donna looked at me and Harjit. Then she said, fuel, food, batteries, medical supplies, and information. The bearded man blinked. Information? Yes, Dana said. We want to know what's happening in the towns. We want to know what roads are blocked. We want to know if there are official broadcasts. The man nodded slowly. Deal. He stepped back and signaled to his people. Harjit muttered, We just made ourselves important. Dana didn't disagree. She just said, We already were. We're choosing how. Outside, the bearded man turned and shouted to his group. They moved back, and 2 of them brought forward empty containers, jugs, coolers, even a clean trash bin with a lid. Dana looked at me. Eli, get the standpipe ready. I felt the weight of that moment like a physical load. Okay, I said. I went to the maintenance bay and started pulling out hoses and fittings that were meant for controlled use, things with pressure ratings, with gaskets, with clamps. My hands moved from habit, but my mind was racing. Because the pump station wasn't just a work site anymore. It was a well in the desert. And we were standing on the rim deciding who got to drink. That first distribution was tense and quiet. We didn't open the gate. We didn't let anyone inside. We ran a hose through a narrow utility pass-through near the gate structure, still within our control, still behind locked metal with the valve on our side. Dana stood with the loudspeaker. Harjit watched cameras and kept notes. I controlled the valve and pressure. We filled containers slowly, enough to matter, not enough to encourage a crowd. The 2 people who approached were careful, eyes darting, hands visible. One of them, a woman with a scraped knee, kept glancing at our fence like she expected something to slam into it. Any infected nearby? Dana asked through the loudspeaker. The woman hesitated, then nodded. On the highway, in town, they're not right. Dana asked, Do they follow sound? The woman swallowed. They follow people. That wasn't an answer I liked. The bearded man approached the edge of the camera view, still outside the agreed distance, and called out, "We saw one in the wash last night, just standing there, like it was listening." Dana's eyes met mine again. She didn't need to say it. If the infected were drawn to people, and people were drawn to water, then water would become a magnet for both. We completed the fills. The two people backed away. Dana told them to leave. And they did. For that day. But as their vehicles pulled away, I watched the dust trail fade into the heat, and I understood something that changed the way I looked at the control screens. Money had stopped mattering already. Stores were closed. Banks were irrelevant. Phones were dying. But water still mattered, and it would matter as long as people had bodies that needed it. Out here, water didn't just keep you alive. Water made you a target. That night, we sat at the break room table under dim lights and ate vending machine food like it was a meal worth remembering. Dana had a printed list in front of her. Ration schedule, fuel burn estimates, equipment check intervals. She turned survival into a spreadsheet because that's what she knew how to do. Harjeet was trying the satellite phone. He'd gotten a connection once, a garbled voice that sounded official but didn't say anything useful before the call dropped. I was thinking about the pumps. A pump station runs on confidence. Confidence that the grid will feed you. Confidence that your sensors are telling the truth. Confidence that the canal upstream will deliver water at the right level. Confidence that if you push water downstream, it will be received by infrastructure that still exists. Now we were running on something else, stubbornness. Dana looked at me. "Eli, if we lose the grid, can we keep the plant running on generator?" I shook my head. "Not the big motors. The generator isn't sized for that. It's for controls and critical loads. We can keep valves and monitoring alive. We can keep lights and security. But we can't move the same volume of water." Harjeet rubbed his forehead. "So, we'll be sitting on water we can't push." "We can still access the canal," Dana said quietly. I knew what she meant. Not officially, not the way it was designed, but there were maintenance taps, sample points, places you could draw water if you had treatment. Dana added, "if the canal still has water." That was the next assumption. The system draws from the Colorado River and runs through multiple divisions and pumping plants. If upstream facilities failed, flow could drop. Harjeet said, "This whole project takes a lot of power. CAP is one of the biggest power users in the state because of the lifting involved." Dana nodded grimly, which means if power is unstable, water is unstable. I stared at my hands. They were scraped and dusty from work. "So, we secure what we can. We store what we can." Dana looked up. Storage. I knew what she was thinking. Elevated tanks. Any kind of gravity-fed reserve that doesn't require electricity once it's full. "We can fill the facility storage tank," I said, "but it's not huge." "What about downstream tanks?" Dana asked. "Can we coordinate fills at low noise times? Keep pressure up? Help the town store water so fewer people come here?" Harjeet's eyes narrowed. "You're talking about using the system the way it's supposed to be used, just with no one supervising." Dana said, "Exactly." In that moment, I saw the shape of the next phase of our lives. We weren't just hiding in a fortified pump station. We were becoming the operators of a lifeline. A lifeline that would draw everyone who needed it. And everyone who wanted it. Dana's phone buzzed one last time before it went silent for good. A final text from her sister in Phoenix. "People are lining up at water stores. Some are fighting. Stay safe." Dana stared at it for a long time, then set the phone down like it was fragile. "We keep control," she said. Harjeet looked at the cameras on the monitor, the fence line, the desert beyond. "And if we can't?" Dana's voice didn't shake. "Then we make sure nobody else takes it from us. I didn't like how that sounded, but I understood what she meant. Because the pump station was not just infrastructure anymore. It was a fortress built around a single resource. And the desert doesn't forgive weakness. By the morning of the 4th day, we saw the first sign that our arrangement with the bearded man's group wasn't enough. A new vehicle appeared on the access road just after sunrise. A white delivery van, moving slow, cautious. It stopped far from the gate. One person stepped out and waved a piece of cloth tied to a stick like a flag. Donna watched on camera. That's not our group. Harjit zoomed in. They're alone. Or pretending to be, I said. Dana keyed the loudspeaker. Stop where you are. The person stopped, raised both hands, and shouted something we couldn't hear. Donna looked at us. We need a protocol. Harjit said, we already have one, no entry, limited water, trade for supplies and information. Donna nodded, and we enforce distance. I watched the lone figure on the camera. They kept glancing back at the van like they expected someone else to step out. A pumping station teaches you to pay attention to small changes. A pressure fluctuation. A vibration that doesn't fit. A noise in a bearing. This felt like that. A small change that meant something bigger. I didn't know yet that the station's greatest threat wasn't the infected. It was the living, organized, hungry, and willing to take what they couldn't negotiate for. And the moment you become the place with water, you stop being invisible forever. The person with the cloth on a stick stood in the heat shimmer like they were afraid to move too fast. From the camera zoom, I could see they weren't carrying much. A small backpack, sun hat, long sleeves even in the morning. Desert smart, not comfortable. Dana kept one hand near the loudspeaker controls and the other on the desk, fingers curled like she was holding herself still. Stop where you are, she repeated through the speaker, slow and clear. The figure froze, then lifted both hands higher and turned in a full circle, showing they weren't hiding anything obvious. Harjit leaned closer to the monitor. They're talking. I watched their mouth move, but the facility microphones weren't meant to pick up speech from that distance. They were meant to detect alarms and impacts. We couldn't hear anything except the faint wash of wind. Dana switched the speaker again. If you can hear me, step back to your vehicle and place whatever you brought on the ground, then back away. The figure hesitated, then nodded, an exaggerated motion, like they understood the rules. They walked back to the van, opened the side door, and pulled out two things: a medium cardboard box and a red plastic fuel can. They set both down on the gravel, then took 5 steps back and raised their hands again. Dana looked at me. Fuel. Harjit's voice stayed low. Could be bait. I didn't disagree. The desert was full of tricks even when nobody meant harm. Mirages, heat, dry gullies that looked solid until you stepped on them. Human traps were just another version. Dana pressed the intercom button that connected to the maintenance bay. Eli, you're not going out there alone. I wasn't planning to, I said, though part of me had. The old instinct to fix things with your hands was hard to shut off. We moved into the small security vestibule near the gate. 2 locked doors in sequence, like an airlock. We didn't have a proper guard tower. This wasn't a prison. It was a utility site. The security was meant to stop trespassers and copper thieves, not a world that had lost its brakes. Dana checked the cameras again, sweeping the fence line. No other movement. No dust plumes. No shapes in the wash. Harjit went to the network cabinet near the vestibule and pulled up the perimeter sensors. No fence alarms. No motion triggers beyond the gate approach. Dana took the facility radio off its hook and clipped it to her belt like it was suddenly a weapon. Okay, she said. We do this controlled. Eli, You and I go to the inner gate window. We talk first. Harjit watches the cameras and the logs. If anything shifts, we pull back." Harjit nodded once. His face was tight, jaw muscles working. We stepped to the small reinforced window set into the outer gate structure. It was there so a contractor could speak to staff without the main gate opening. Normally it was used for signatures and paperwork. Now it felt like the only thin layer between two different realities. Dana hit the exterior speaker again. "You, by the van. State your name and why you're here." The figure moved closer, still keeping distance until they were maybe 40 feet from the gate. Close enough that I could see their face in the heat haze. Young, early 20s maybe, dust in the eyebrows. A dry crack at the corner of the mouth. "My name's Lena," she called. Her voice carried surprisingly well in the open. "Lena Ortiz. I'm not armed. I brought fuel and batteries. I need water and—" She paused, swallowed. "I need to know if this place is safe." Dana didn't soften. "Safe from what?" Lena glanced behind her at the van. "From them. From people. From whatever's happening." Her eyes flicked to the fence line, then to the buildings beyond, like she was trying to decide if we were real. "Where did you come from?" Donna asked. "Salome," Lena said. "Then Quartzsite. Then I followed the service road. People said there's a pump station out here. They said you're giving water." Dana's gaze went sharp. She didn't look at me, but I felt the question. How fast does news travel now? "Who told you?" Dana asked. Lena hesitated. "A group on the highway. They've got a bus, a man with a gray beard. He said there's a schedule." Dana exhaled, quiet. "So, they're talking about us." Harjit's voice came through the vestibule intercom. "Dana, 2 vehicles just popped on camera 3, south access. Moving slow, no dust plume yet, might be staying in the hard pack." Dana's shoulders stiffened. Lena didn't hear Harjit, but she saw Dana's posture change. Dana kept her voice steady. "Lena, step back toward your van, now." Lena's head snapped toward the road behind her. "What?" "Now," Dana repeated, sharper. Lena backed up fast, eyes wide, and reached the van. She didn't get in. She just stood beside it like she was afraid of being trapped inside. I moved to the camera monitor mounted in the vestibule and saw what Harjit was seeing. 2 vehicles. A dark SUV and a tan pickup creeping down the access road. Not rushing, not panicking. Hunters, not prey. Dana raised the loudspeaker. "Unidentified vehicles, stop where you are." The SUV didn't stop. It kept rolling. Dana's voice hardened. "This is a restricted facility. If you approach the gate, you will not be allowed access." The SUV finally stopped about 60 yards out. The pickup stopped behind it. 3 people got out of the SUV, 2 from the pickup. 5 total. All adults. They moved with confidence that made my skin tighten. One of them walked forward alone. He was tall, wearing sunglasses and a long-sleeve shirt, and he had something slung low at his side, not a rifle, but not nothing. It could have been a short shotgun or a long tool. The camera couldn't tell. Either way, he wasn't empty-handed. He stopped and shouted, "We're here for water." Dana didn't answer immediately. She watched his body language, the way he stood like the road belonged to him. Harjit's voice came again, urgent. "Dana, I'm seeing more movement. Camera 2, West Wash. Something's moving along the fence line, low." My stomach dipped. Lena's head turned sharply, like she'd heard something too. She pressed a hand to the van door. Dana spoke into the loudspeaker. "State your name, state your intent, and keep your distance." The man laughed. "My intent is not dying of thirst, same as everyone else." Dana said, "If you want water, you follow the rules. 2 people at a time, containers only, trade for supplies. The man took one slow step forward like he was testing her. What if I don't feel like trading? Dana's hand tightened on the speaker control. Then you leave. He took another step, then stopped. He tilted his head like he was listening for something behind our fence. I realized he could probably hear the faint hum of our equipment, even with the pump running steady. A predator listens for life. I see vehicles inside, he shouted. I see lights. There are 3 of you at most. You think a fence is going to keep people out forever? Lena whispered, not to us, but to herself. Oh no. Dana didn't flinch. Back up to your vehicles. The man didn't back up. He turned his head slightly, and one of his people by the pickup lifted something. Definitely a long gun this time. Not pointed at us, not yet, but held with intent. Harjeet's intercom crackled. Dana. West Wash movement confirmed. 2, maybe 3 infected. They're coming toward the fence. They're drawn by the voices. The timing was perfect in the worst way. Dana's eyes flicked to the camera showing the wash. I saw them too, shapes moving unevenly, stumbling but persistent. They weren't sprinting. They were doing something worse, closing distance without urgency, like they had all the time in the world. The man outside the gate noticed Lena looking over her shoulder. He followed her gaze, and his grin widened. Looks like you've got company, he called. Open the gate and we'll help you handle it. Dana's voice went cold. You brought them. The man shrugged. The desert brings everything eventually. Lena's breathing turned visible. Quick, shallow, she backed tighter against her van. The infected reached the fence line on the west side. They grabbed at the chain link, pushing faces and hands through. The fence held, but the sound of them was awful. Not screaming, not dramatic, just that wet, strained breathing and the occasional sharp exhale when they hit the metal. The 5 people by the vehicles shifted like they were enjoying the show. Dana looked at me, and I saw the decision forming. Not fear, strategy. If we stayed in this standoff, we'd be pinned between 2 threats. Living predators at the gate, infected at the fence, and a lone civilian caught in the middle. And every second we talked, we pulled more attention. Dana pressed the loudspeaker button one more time. All vehicles, leave the access road immediately. This facility is closed. The tall man spread his arms. Then we take it. He lifted his hand in a small gesture, and one of his people started walking towards the gate with a heavy tool. Bolt cutters. Harjeet's voice snapped. Dana, if they cut the chain, they're in. We can't physically stop them. Dana's eyes flicked to the inner gate control panel. The motorized gate could open from our side. It could also lock harder if we engage the secondary bars and drop the internal steel bollard that blocked vehicle impact. Dana turned to me. Eli, bollard, now. I didn't hesitate. I ran to the bollard control and hit the switch. A heavy steel post began to rise from the ground inside the gate approach, slow and deliberate. It was meant to stop a truck from ramming through. It made a deep mechanical sound that carried. The infected at the fence reacted immediately. Their heads snapped toward the noise. The men outside the gate reacted too. They saw the bollard rising and realized we weren't bluffing about defense. Cute, the tall man shouted. You think that stops us? Dana stepped closer to the small window and spoke without the loudspeaker, voice low but carrying through the glass when she raised it. Lena, get in your van and leave. Now, drive north. Don't stop. Lena's eyes widened. What about... Go, Dana said, firm. Lena didn't argue. She yanked the van door open and climbed in, hands shaking on the steering wheel. The tall man noticed. He turned and waved at his people. One of them started moving toward Lena's van, fast. Dana slammed to the loudspeaker. Do not approach that vehicle. The person ignored her. I felt the moment tipping. We were about to watch someone get dragged into a different kind of problem. Then Harjit did something I didn't expect. He killed the exterior loudspeaker feed and triggered the site alarm. Just a short burst. Not the full continuous siren, but enough to create a sharp, piercing tone for 2 seconds. It was a calculated move. It wasn't meant to scare people. It was meant to distract. Every head outside snapped toward the sound. The infected at the west fence reacted like magnets turning. They started moving along the fence line toward the gate area. The tall man swore and shouted at his people to back off. The one moving towards Lena hesitated. That hesitation gave Lena her window. The van lurched forward, tires spinning on gravel. She cut wide around the stopped vehicles, forcing the SUV to reverse or risk getting clipped. The SUV driver swerved, and Lena shot past, dust exploding behind her like a smokescreen. The tall man turned back to the gate, furious. "That was your fuel," he shouted, like we'd stolen from him. Dana's face was hard. "Leave." The infected were now close enough to be visible from the gate camera. 2 of them pressing against the fence, hands clawing through the chain link near where the men stood outside. The men backed up instinctively. Dana leaned toward the microphone. "You want water? You can't even handle standing near the fence." The tall man's expression shifted. Not fear, annoyance, like the infected were insects spoiling his plan. He backed away slowly, keeping eyes on the fence line. "Fine," he called. "We'll come back when you're tired." He motioned to his group. They retreated to their vehicles, not running, not panicking, just recalculating. They drove off the access road, slow, deliberate, like they wanted us to see that they weren't defeated, just postponing. Dana didn't relax until their dust trail disappeared. Then she turned to Harjit. "How many infected at the fence now?" Harjit checked the camera feeds. 4, maybe 5. They're clustering near the gate because of the noise we made. Donna looked at me. "We can't keep doing this. Every interaction is a beacon." I nodded. "So we change how we operate." Dana's eyes narrowed. "We make water less visible." Harjit swallowed. "Or we make it visible somewhere else." That idea hung in the air. A decoy. A controlled spill, a scheduled fill point away from the station. Something that drew people away from the fence line so we weren't the center of gravity. Dana walked to the table and pulled out the facility map again, fingers tracing the access road, the canal maintenance paths, the low spots and wash crossings. "We can't defend this place like a fort forever," she said. "Not with 3 people, but we can manage it like a system." She looked up at us, eyes steady. "We build a water routine that doesn't require anyone to stand at our gate," she said. "We pick a fill point away from the station, somewhere with open visibility. We set rules. We keep the station dark and quiet." "And if they ignore the rules?" I asked. Dana's voice stayed flat. "Then the water stops." Harjit stared at the cameras where the infected pressed to the fence. "And if they come anyway?" Dana didn't answer with comfort. She answered with reality. "Then we stop being a workplace," she said, "and we become a holdout." I looked at the control screens again. Flow, pressure, numbers holding steady. Outside, hands grabbed at the fence like the desert itself wanted in. And somewhere down the road, men with bolt cutters had just learned our name. We spent the rest of that day reinforcing everything we could without making more noise. We moved heavy storage racks against the maintenance bay doors from the inside. We chained secondary locks on interior rooms, so if someone did get through an outer door, they'd hit another barrier. We pulled spare rolls of chain link and welded them to the weak points of the fence near the wash where erosion had undercut it. At sunset, Dana sat down with the map and started planning a decoy fill point on the service road north of us, near a wide turnout where visibility was clear in every direction. And I realized as the sky turned orange and the desert cooled that we'd crossed the line. We weren't waiting for help anymore. We were building the rules of the new place water created. And if we got those rules wrong, the pump station wouldn't just fail. It would be taken. Or it would become the last place standing in a desert full of people who couldn't go home. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.